Can AI deploy and manage the networks as smoothly as your music playlist? Let's find out. On my left hand side over here in this dashboard, I'll try to give a voice command, and from that voice command we are going to generate a text with the help of OpenAI voice to text whisper API, and we are going to send that text out again to the OpenAI API to generate some configuration commands. Okay, and that configuration command is going to get pushed over here. We have this topology, we have R1 and R2. Here is the console port for that, and I have already logged in into the consoles of both these routers just to show you that as we push the configuration pops up. Okay, now here we have the Python program which does the trick. So without further ado, let's begin. First, I will try to run some show commands. On router R1, check the version. I have recorded and I will try to submit. Submitted.
Device R1 commands show version.
Yeah, so here, as you can see, that this is the configuration it generated. On router R1, check the version. This is actually the initial prompt that I gave for it to generate the configuration in this JSON format. Okay, so it generated this configuration, and as you can see in R1 it ran the command. Let's see what it ran. Okay, so show version only it ran. Okay, so we are sorted over here. This is cool, huh? Now let's try to ramp this up a little bit. So let's try to run some show commands on both router R1 and R2 at one go. On both router R1 and R2, check the interface IP address and interface description. I'll stop and submit. By the way, we can play over here just to hear out whatever speech that I've given over here. Submit. So it's processing.
Device R1 commands show IP interface brief, show interface description. Device R2 commands show IP interface brief, show interface description.
By the way, the voice that you are seeing is also being generated by AI. Whatever configuration it generated, it's from the text, it's again converting back to audio. So it ran here it generated this command and it's running on R1. It ran actually show interface IP interface brief and show interface description. I have given a timeout for R2, so probably that's why it's waiting. Let's see. Yeah, it didn't start. Yeah, it started on R2 now. Yeah, the same show IP interface brief and show interface description. So as you can see, I just asked it to um, in natural language to do some job in show commands, and it did, like it understood which command to run on its own. Okay, so here is the command it generated. Now again, ramp this up. Let's try to see if it can generate configuration command and it can configure the router R1 and R2. Okay. So here is the topology. If you are to be on the same page in Ethernet 1/0 and 1 slash this 1/0 on both the routers, I'll try to configure. Okay. Let's check. On both the routers R1 and R2 on interface Ethernet 1/0, configure IP address. You can take IP address from 10.10.10.1/29 subnet. Unshort both the ports and put a appropriate description. Okay, now I'll submit this. It will be tricky. Let's see what it does.
Device R1 commands Ethernet 10, IP address 10.10.10.1, 255.255.255.248, no scription. This is R1 Ethernet 10 interface. Device interface Ethernet 10, IP address 10.10.10.2, 255.255.248, no shutdown. Description. This is R2 Ethernet 10 interface.
Okay, the configuration is generated. Let's see if it is correct or anything else is needed. Okay, it's pushing. It has thrown some error. Let's see what was the error. Let's go up. Let's check if the configuration generated was good. Same error has come on R2 as well. Okay, here is the configuration generated. As you can see, it generated the configuration almost correctly, but it didn't go into the config mode first, and then it should have like then generated like config T or configuration terminal is missing. So let me prompt it properly so that it understands. Yeah, let's see if it can correct itself. On both the routers R1 and R2, I need to configure interface Ethernet 1/0. You can take IP address from 10.10.10.1/29 subnet, put an appropriate description highlighting the connectivity. One more thing to add, you should remember you need to go to config mode with config terminal command and then run the required commands. I'll stop here and submit. Let's see if it generates correctly. It's processing. Scroll down a little bit. Just a sec.
Device R1 config terminal interface Ethernet 10. Description. This is R1 Ethernet 10 interface highlighting the connectivity. IP address 10.10.1.1, 255.255.25.248, no shutdown. Demands. Config terminal interface Ethernet 10. Description. This is R2 Ethernet 10 interface highlighting the connectivity. IP address 10.10.10.2, 255.255.248, no shutdown.
So it literally took the from my context that interface highlighting the connectivity. It should have like understood more. So the point is there that I need to be more specific. Okay, so it did the configuration on R1 looks like. Let's see what it did. Okay, yeah, it did the configuration, but yeah, the description it took, this is R1 Ethernet. I mean, that is not what I meant. Probably my prompting was wrong. Yeah. So as you can see, it was able to configure both the routers, and here is the configuration it generated for that. So now let me do one thing. Let me correct this description. On the interface Ethernet 1/0 of both the routers R1 and R2, correct the description showing the connectivity between R1 and R2. What I mean is that for R1, it should say that it's connected to router R2 and vice versa for R2's case. Now, how I am presenting the things is not that direct. It's more of a convoluted. Even if I say to a normal human being, his or she might not able to understand at one go. But let's see what happens. Submit.
Device R1 commands config terminal interface Ethernet 1 0 description connected to R2 no choice R2 commands config terminal interface Ethernet 1 description connected to R1.
So it came up with this no shutdown as well. I didn't actually mention it to do it. Okay. But yeah, it has put, it looks like it has done a proper description connected to R2, and let's see what it generates for R2. Okay, R2 is also getting configured. Okay, now I'll try to do one more trick, but before that I'd like to also understand, what do you think? Is this not cool? Let me know in the comments below that what do you think? Is AI capable of doing the stuff? And by the way, I did not even use the most capable um, API that we have for generating the configuration. So I used GPT-3 Turbo 16K. I can use GPT-4 128K, which is like top notch. I'll try to test that out in future videos as well. Okay. Now to sum up, what we have observed is that using the 16K model of GPT 3.5, the configuration generation has been pretty good. It has faltered a little bit on couple of cases. In case number one, while configuring the interface on Ethernet 1/0, it initially did not go into the configuration mode to do the configuration. It just generated the configuration commands that we need to do apart from config terminal. But with a better prompt, it corrected itself and it was able to generate the configuration required to do the configuration on both the routers R1 and R2. However, in the other case, where we asked the AI to generate just the command to change the description, it additionally generated a no shut command as well. So we can kind of infer that the quality of our prompt is going to determine the kind of output that we're going to get. And to answer that, if you are still ready to take a leap from the manual configuration that we do, or human intervention or audit or peer review that we do, to a more AI oriented design where AI takes the charge of the network and does whatever configuration or this thing is required, it it still remains debatable. But we should also remember that the models that I have used has not been fine-tuned. I have just used it out of the self. If I could have fine-tuned the models a little bit more, the responses would have been precise. Just like you have seen, like how it generated the config t command with additional input when I asked it to correct. What do you think? What can be the use cases of AI? And do you think that AI will be replace a network engineer in the daily jobs that we do? And if you have any such use cases, please also share. I'll try to make Python programs or try to figure out how we can um, use those use cases and try to also make a video out of it. Last but not the least, let's try to do something creative with this AI and let's see if it is able to do something more than just a network configuration generation. Okay. This weekend we have Diwali. So what I want you to do is that can you please generate a MOTD command keeping the occasion of Diwali in mind. Try to put some fireworks also in the MOTD banner. Also say out loud Happy Diwali. We'll submit. Let's see what happens.
Certainly. Here's a network configuration command format with a MOTD banner for Diwali. Device, R1, commands, banner mode C, certainly, happy Diwali. Wishing you a joyful and prosperous Diwali. Cute hands.
Yeah, it
Device
said
R2, commands, banner mode C, te, happy Diwali. Wishing you a joyful and prosperous Diwali.
it's actually trying to say out the asterisks and all, so that's why it kind of hiccuping. Yeah, so this is what it generated. Also, to clarify why it did not push the configuration in the router R1 and R2, because I asked it to say out loud, which means it's going to come up with a string and not just a JSON response. So without the JSON response, it will become invalid. And with the invalid JSON response, it's not going to try to push the configuration into R1 and R2. So that will be that for today. Wish you a very happy, joyful and prosperous Diwali. Thank you for watching this video. If this content resonates with you, please consider subscribing for more. And to keep YouTube Baba happy, don't forget to hit that like button.